the NGO Interecat Center located in Kiev, and now I'm senior expert on sustainable development, on biodiversity, on environment protection, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and very welcome. Arjan?
Hi, everyone. My name is Arjan van Houwelingen. I'm with World Animal Protection, a international animal welfare civil society organization, and I'm the chief of strategic policy and public affairs. And I'm here to listen in and hope to learn. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining. And I see we have two more participants, which name I can unfortunately not read because it's in Russian. If you have not introduced yourself yet, please go ahead.
I guess I can help. One of the participants' name is Насиев Бейбит. Насиев, можете себе представиться, пожалуйста?
Бейбит, простите, у вас выключен микрофон.
Да, извините. Добрый день, коллеги. Я из Казахстана, Западно-Казахстанский аграрно-технический университет имени Джангирхана. Я профессор Высшей школы технологии производства продукции растениеводства. Я рад, что подключился к сегодняшней конференции. Желаю всем удачи.
Батир, мы вас не слышим.
Батыр,
Микрофон, пожалуйста.
прошу прощения, говорит Мария. Вы не могли бы представиться?
Здравствуйте, Матазим Касимов, директор филиала Института животноводства. Это на севере Таджикистана, Сагдийская область, с командой Батур Хамзаев, Аким Рахматов, заведующий отделение, они там, заведующий отделом. Это город Худжанд, это на севере, рядом Сырдарьи. Спасибо.
Thank you very much. I think we went through the whole list, and thank you very much for participating. We have a good representation from Kazakhstan, and this is somehow related to the fact that the World Bank, Gulsum has mentioned that also is supporting a large operation to start soon on beef production in Kazakhstan. So we were able to reach out to some partners there. So let's, without further ado, let's go through the three introductory presentations that we have. They will cover the spectrum of the kind of themes that are looked at in the context of the Food Summit. We start with Aaron on questions of health. We'll then go to Alex on questions of environment, and then we go to Sarah for questions of resilience and equity. Mostly equity. So, Aaron, over to you. Thanks. We can see your screen.
Okay, I'm sorry. Sometimes I don't find the microphone. Well, thank you very much, Pierre. I will try to be very brief. As I mentioned, I'm the regional officer for animal health and production for FAO regional office. And we recently published, all our team, Yuri and the team here in Budapest, we published the regional strategy for animal health and production as a wake-up call for impact. Just to be brief, let me just make it as a PowerPoint presentation. The mission, you can see here the mission written in English, but basically what we want is to improve animal health in production using a multidisciplinary and coordinated approaches to make this region have a better livelihoods and nutrition status for all. We, in this strategy, have 3 pillars. The first one is about animal health, all what is related to animal disease, transboundary animal disease, and endemic diseases. The second one is animal production. In simple words, how to make animal to produce better. And the third one is about antimicrobial resistance, which became a very important work in FAO daily agenda, I would say. To all the 3 pillars, we have several cross-cutting issues, including community-driven intervention, like farmer and field schools, and gender and equal opportunity for all, coordination with other organizations, communication, farming as a business, resource mobilization, etc. Let's start with the first pillar. The foundation for this pillar as the animal health are based on disease prioritization and legal framework, using the involvement of different stakeholders, from farmers to government officials. And in all of that, we try to use different approaches for innovation and technology. In animal health, we will follow what we call the GAM, Good Emergency Management Practices. The idea here is to make the veterinary services of each country to be prepared for animal disease outbreak, to be able to prevent it, or if in case of animal disease outbreak, to early detect it, rapidly respond, and follow by a good recovery period. So you can look at it as a cycle of actions. So in all of that, we will try to work with countries on different aspects of each of these components and improving their capacity on the national level. In animal production, we will work a lot on feeding. What does it mean sustainable pasture management? How to make your limited amount of pasture being able to support increasing animal production. So with the limited amount of pasture that you have, we still believe that you can, with a good management, you can improve your production. Then, of course, we given these limited resources, we want to reduce feed waste and improve the feed quality. We all know how often hay and silage are stored in a bad condition, which of course make them lose a lot of their nutritional value. But beyond that, they can get some fungus and even toxins. We believe that in conditions where you have limited the possibility to produce hay, silage, and to pasture management, taking advantage of crop residues and different agro-industry byproducts will help farmers to improve their production, either milk production, meat production, etc. When it comes to cattle breeding, we want to support the smallholders, small and medium holders, mainly in the dairy sector. This will focus on artificial insemination services for cattle, either meat or dairy, and also on national animal identification and traceability system, or as we call it, NAITS. Very important that even smallholder will start somehow to record the performance of their animals. That will help a lot in terms of genetic improvement and good selection. And that is one of our aims as well. Another part is trying to implement in different scenarios what we call climate smart animal production. That's also related to pasture management, or any activity that will lead to better conversion of feed and therefore reduce of gas emissions by ruminants. Genetic conservation for different species, whether poultry, goats, sheep, horses, and cattle, is extremely important, acknowledging the characters that each local breeds can bring into the production sector. Also, family and backyard small-scale poultry, in FAO, we see it as a very good alternative for income for many families, particularly poor families headed by women, but also as an alternative to ruminant production, which we know contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. Relatively new to this area, and thanks a lot to this expertise of Yuri, we started to work on beekeeping for apiculture, whether on the health part or coordination with different partners, and trying to help smallholders to trade and have an added value to the product, so they have better access for trade. In antimicrobial resistance, which is, as I mentioned, it is extremely important part of FAO work on today in the agriculture sector in general, we try to develop the country's capacity to do surveillance on antimicrobial resistance as well as antimicrobial use in the food and the agriculture in general. But we focus on the animal part. We really believe that we can help farmers to reduce the need for antimicrobial or antibiotic use, and therefore to reduce the threat of antimicrobial resistance. So this will come also with our efforts to make the governance that related to AMR stronger and more effective, because it's all about also political will that countries need to have in order to approach the antimicrobial resistant threat. But beyond that, we all believe that by promoting good practices in animal production in general will lead to less use of antibiotics, and as I mentioned, intuitively will reduce the threat of antimicrobial resistance. A little about the cross-cutting issues. When we talk about community-driven intervention and policy implementation, we really look about the bottom-up approach, where we try to implement ideas in the community level, which eventually lead to policies once they are successful. In all of this, we will try to keep the gender equal opportunities for all. It's not about only gender, but in many cases about minorities, about handicaps, etc. We realize that for farmers to have better access to markets, they need to look on their farm, even if it's a small one, as a business. And as part of this, we want to provide adequate training for farmers on how to treat their farming as a real business. Of course, communication is extremely important because our message, in order to have an impact, must be well communicated, and we all know that. So different kinds of communication, whether a verbal communication or publications, have to address each stakeholder in his own language. It means that for farmers, it have to speak a very simple language, and for politicians or decision makers, it has to adequate the language as well. Of course, all of our ambitions and activities here without resources, financial resources, cannot be accomplished, and therefore resource mobilization is also something that we need to dedicate time for it and a lot of effort. And with that, in parallel, coordinating with other international organizations like WHO or the World Animal Health Organization, or OIE. I just wanted to show this, the Reo's bottom-up approach for livestock development. As you can see here, we want to establish evidence-based and sustainable policies. To start with identification of livestock-related needs when we consult with community members along the value chain, a specific value chain, and then we pilot this solution that we find for their needs in small area. This will be, after being successful through Farmer Field School, will be expanded into different additional regions within the country. And hopefully, if these are also successful in substantial regional or within the country in a different region, will lead to the government for formal policies at the national level. That's in brief the bottom-up approach that we want to adopt, and also the end of my presentation on the regional strategy for animal health and production. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Like your last picture. Any question to Aaron?
Okay.
I have one, Aaron. I mean, what's you talk about resources and engagement in the sector regionally. I wanted to ask, what is your general impression on resource mobilization for livestock in the region? In which direction is it taking, and what are the themes that are being supported? Do you have some kind of overview on that?
Well, I have a very frank opinion. I think that we need to do more on, particularly here in Reo, on resource mobilization if we want to work with smallholders, even in medium or even large. We need to improve our capacity. There are some internal issues with in FAO on the resource mobilization, which this is not really the platform to discuss. But definitely, I think Reo itself has the capacity to work with the big donors like the World Bank, like EBRD, and implement bigger projects that we have the technical capacity for them. How to do that? I generally leave it for my supervisor or my management, but I definitely have a very clear opinion about the need for this to be in the regional office, in order to make sure that FAO is speaking in one voice, one technical voice, and of course politically, but more importantly in this case, one technical voice, and ensuring also the right impact on the ground for the sake of farmers.
And do you see any big large group? Sorry, pushing on that investment, but do you see any large group making a significant investment? I mean, we see that definitely in Kazakhstan around beef. Do you see that in other countries? Private sector, and of course a lot of farm level is private sector. But I mean, large companies or firms investing in
yeah, unfortunately, I personally have not been aware of much of private sector investment in this. Of course, we are aware about, as I mentioned, the World Bank and EBRD investment, but the private sector itself, it looks to me that it is still struggling to understand that the investment in the sector will eventually bring it back money. My personal impression in this region, as I know other regions, is that the private sector want to see the money fast, almost from one day to another, and this doesn't lead to sustainable investment in the development of the private sector, whether medium or large production systems. And also this, of course, linked to improving the access to markets and markets in general. But as a technical officer, again, the technical officer is a veterinarian. This is my impression.
Okay, thank you very much. Aaron, I know you will have to go, so just say.
I really need to go.
Yeah, to the colleagues, if you want to ask questions to Aaron, it will have to be now because then he already went out. Yeah, go ahead, Arjen.
Hi, Aaron. Thank you for that presentation. Based on the work that you've been doing, could you perhaps tell us in short, in terms of where do you think the sort of focus of in the future will be? Will it be focused on growth through technology, or more focused on how to sort of reconnect livestock production with nature? And given the COVID period that we've had, given the fact that there's a lot of emphasis on biodiversity and biodiversity recovery, just perhaps from that perspective, where you see the sort of future?
I think all of the above. I think the region in general is very diverse. I mean, we have several sub-regions, correct? But the region is so diverse, culturally and economically, and we really need to be very peculiar, very specific in how we address the needs of each country, and within each country, how we address the livestock sector. So for me, yes, of course, we need to keep biodiversity, but this is almost as a default. In the same time, we need to pay a lot of attention to the fact that this is a world trend that smallholders are disappearing because of age, because of migration to big cities, etc. And it's easier to work online from home than to go and milk your cows at 4 o'clock in the morning. And in the same time, bigger farms are created, bigger production system. So we really need to find the balance between supporting the country in supporting these big systems that are also in the same time need to keep with no regulation on environmental regulation. Of course, this is going to be wild, and also in the same time ensure that smallholders are not going for poverty more than they are, and they don't migrate to the city and also fall into poverty. So this is a balance that I think that we have. I don't think this is only in this region, but this is the balance we have to find, how to do that in terms of investment, in terms of policy advising to governments, and also in the action on the ground. How FAO should we help big farms to better manage their resources in order to be environmental friendly and keep the biodiversity, or we should continue working with smallholders, which eventually many of them will disappear, and ensuring that they are not falling in the meanwhile to poverty. I think it's a tremendous challenge that we are facing daily. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you have. Thank you.
And okay. I guess we'll also hear more on those topics from Sarah. Aaron, thank you so much for pushing a little bit of time for us and making sure to be with us. Really
my pleasure. I'm sorry I cannot be with all because I'm committed to being a training.
No problem.
On presentation, so public speaking. So.
All right.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Aaron. Alex, over to you.
Hello, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. I would like to share my screen. One moment. Yes, I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen. You may just want to put it exactly. That's perfect.
Okay. For Russian translation, I would like to make some comments that boost nature positive production is translated in two different ways, and I would like to give both options. Повышение положительного воздействия на природу и увеличение экологически оптимизированных подходов к производству. I would like to speak about nature positive production and also provide some examples from climate smart livestock strategy development in Central Asia and Azerbaijan that we did together with Yuri in the last few months. As you can imagine, it's not very easy to deal with many issues in Central Asia region. And the major issue people face at the moment is actually not just one issue, but complex of them. First, countries need to ensure that people are able to get food. Secondly, countries need to ensure that people in agriculture and especially in livestock have enough sources and money to sustain their work. And of course, countries need to ensure environmental sustainability in this context. And considering that we all dealing with pandemic at the moment, countries suffering from this global issue as well. So dealing with natural positive production at the moment, it's not very high priority for countries, but I really hope that they are on their way to transfer from nature negative to nature positive production system. What does this mean? It means to organize their livestock and agriculture system in the way that at least not harm the environment. And in our case, we are focusing especially on climate change and reduction of emission, increasing carbon capture. So, as you can imagine, it's very diverse region. It includes all Central Asia countries, and in our case, also Azerbaijan. And we are dealing with developing a strategy for climate smart solutions. As I received suggestions not to make too many slides, just about five. I didn't separate in pillars, but I can explain what is inside of our strategy. Is more about first pillar, livestock and climate change, where we speak about Paris Agreement and countries' contribution to climate change obligations worldwide. Second pillar is about governance in climate smart livestock and climate change. Third pillar is actually policy formulation for reducing emissions and various technical solutions based on the best practices worldwide. Fourth pillar is resources mobilization. And here we are speaking about different financial options, analyze the existing grants and programs, and also inform the region about options they have. And last, fifth pillar is quite small. It's just work to follow next steps. And what are lessons learned from the work on this strategy? What we discovered is actually very interesting. You know, we can build a very solid brick and mortar wall, let's say comparing this wall with climate smart livestock strategy. But at this moment, this wall has no proper basis. It's like we are putting this structure into, let's call it a tree house. And tree house is a local climate change policy. It's still in development. And definitely we can create the best climate smart livestock strategy for region, but if it doesn't fit very well in their regional climate policy, it will be hard to sustain. So at this moment, I suggest that we keep the same pace with region and coordinate our activities with local policies. It's especially important if we speak about Paris Agreement and local countries' contribution to Paris Agreement. I did analyze all national contributions from countries to Paris Agreement, their report, and I discovered that only 3 countries actually mentioned something close to livestock. But they mention it in very mosaic way, and it means that during preparation of their reports for countries and for Paris Agreement obligations, countries didn't consult properly with livestock specialists. And my concern is they probably did not consult properly even with agriculture specialists, because in some cases it's really brief mentioning of very important topics. And in this case, as you see on my picture, climate smart livestock is just one puzzle that we need properly fit into the existing climate politics of specific countries. How we can do it? First, it's very important for people in the countries understand what we are actually doing and what we are speaking about. At this moment, I discovered a variety of different definitions about sustainable livestock, climate smart livestock, low carbon livestock. And you know, it's relatively new terminology for many people in the region. So they need better connection with what they are already doing. And they have responsibility with Paris Agreement. So I would like to keep very close to low carbon strategy developed by countries at this moment. And what I need to emphasize, it's novelty of this work. I did analysis of climate smart livestock strategies around the world, and I need honestly to say it's not so many. It's just few countries at the moment who have a climate smart livestock strategy. So we are offering completely innovative product for Central Asia. And in some countries, this process is led by industry. In our case, it's led by intergovernmental organizations. And this is why participation on local level was very important. And we succeeded very well organizing discussions. And I provide some links on my slide here, but I will also share all the links in Russian in chat after my presentation. So what we organized, first we developed 3 different drafts of the strategy in cooperation with our stakeholders, and we change our content accordingly to their needs. It's very important to hear what the real needs in the region exist at the moment. Second, we organized various stakeholder engagement activities. Some of them were like one-on-one consultation up to 1.5 hours each. And most important part was organization of the group webinars. We organized 3 different webinars in March, May of this year. And as you can see from the screen, I posted all recordings on YouTube. And we usually had up to 31 participants actively participating in our webinars, and also between 40 and 70 views of each webinar later, what is not bad at all, considering that almost all webinars were 2.5 hours each. And people showed a lot of interest, and we discussed various practices from countries. I really appreciate that Mr. Kasimov also did presentation for us, and we had very good presentation from Uzbekistan, and we got the extra meeting on resources mobilization and different grants, and we had a guest speaker from the Netherlands. So it was very diverse discussion about topics important for this region, and I am happy.
Alex, sorry to interrupt you, but in order to move on, I think it's good if you can tell us a little bit more on the output of these conversations. That would be much better.
Yes.
And we still need to move on and to be able to close.
Excellent. You know, we just finished this work in the Russian language. It will be translated in English. So we expect to share whole strategy with all of you in a few weeks, I hope. But Russian version is already existing. And because I am based in Canada, it was really interesting for me to look at practices here in Canada. And what is really interesting for our work, Canadian organizations are very well organized to discuss different sustainability policies and also climate smart livestock policies in Canada. Industry created a special strategy of emission reduction, and it's already implemented. And Canada has 40 years of experience. And in the most successful period of the 30 years, Canada reduced 15% of greenhouse gases emission. And here you can see also a few documents developed in this year. And what is important and can be transferred as experience to Central Asia, it's good to build different coalitions. In Canada, already created coalition of 22 partners that work on climate smart livestock policies in this country. So thank you very much for your attention, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or email me at alex@alexbelyakov.com. I really appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. We can open the floor for a few questions, but really, you got us really interested through the extensive consultation that you led in the region. Since you said this strategy is already available in Russian, can you give us the headlines of this strategy? What is in there very succinctly explained?
Yes, for Russian-speaking people on this call, you are able to open links that I provided in chat already. For English-speaking participants, I would like to mention structure. Again, the 5 major pillars. The first one is about livestock and climate change policies in countries, where we speak about different countries' contribution to Paris Agreement, local regulation and policies. Second pillar is governance and climate smart livestock and climate change policies, where we are analyzing different governance practices already existing in countries and ways how to improve them. Because, you know, it's very important to build a solid structure from the beginning. And I really appreciate that FAO started this work right now, because many countries of the region are working on their low carbon strategies in the moment. And if they can receive support from livestock specialists, it will benefit them enormously, because they can create a special part of their country's strategies dedicated to agriculture and livestock. And what is major challenge in many countries at the moment, there are many stakeholders involved in this process, but sometimes this process is led by just one ministry. For example, in Uzbekistan, this work is led by Ministry of Energy. And I am afraid they didn't consult agriculture specialists at all. I asked our partner in Uzbekistan to contact this ministry and let us know how we connect with team working on this strategy. And unfortunately, they were not successful to connect with this team. But in many cases, such teams exist and they work with international organizations. In case of Uzbekistan, they work with EBRD, and a consultant firm that received support from them. And you know, in Uzbekistan, major partner is Ministry of Energy. In other countries are sometimes Ministry of the Environment. In other countries, meteorological services. We have also some examples where people in finance are responsible for this topic. So it's a lot of silo breaking culture issues involved in this process. This is why second pillar in this strategy is about governance. And third pillar is about policy formulation for emission reduction and various technical solutions based on the best practices worldwide. So we not only analyzed existing practices, but we provided ranking for practices, saying this is more advanced and already recommended for wide introduction everywhere. And this practice is good, but it's still like investigation stage and something similar. So it's also a good part of this strategy. And the next pillar is resources mobilization. We paid a lot of attention to the local needs to find additional funding for their projects, and provided some solutions and explain how different funds working in this specific region, what they did already, what kind of projects exist in Central Asia, and how to connect dots between the existing projects and new proposed projects. And the last part is work to follow next steps. So there are some options to provide directions. And for us, it was important to understand, are we solving real problems? Are we solving the right problems? Because, you know, in sustainable development, I am really a supporter of this 5P approach about people, planet, prosperity, partnership, and peace. We should understand that some countries of the region are still in conflict. We should understand that many countries are in very poor economic conditions that actually decreased during this pandemic. And many issues we address about environmental sustainability are not really resonating in the moment, but we are showing the way how to connect environmental sustainability issues with real needs of the countries and their responsibilities according to Paris Agreement and reporting with sustainable development.
Okay. Yeah, and that's very good, and I think some of that will be great that when we go to the slides that you insert some of those elements in there, because I think they are relevant to many of the questions, to these action tracks that are there for the system summit. Any other question to Alex, or shall we move to Sarah's presentation? All right, then thank you very much, Alex, again. It's really important work that you're doing. We hope that we will be able to see that, at least those who read English only, that will be able to read through that strategy. Sarah, over to you.
Okay, I'll share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about fostering inclusive growth in the Central Asian livestock very quickly. And this is based on a report which I did with Martin Petrick, looking at trade-offs amongst sustainability goals in the sector. It's a review covering the entire sector from producers through pastures, looking at intensification, value chains, human consumption of livestock products, climate change and policies. So I'm just going to pick out a couple of points which are relevant for the inclusive growth in the sector, looking in particular at smallholders. So as you're probably all aware, working in the region, one particular aspect of the livestock sector in Central Asia is that it's characterized by these three very different types of structure, which have emerged from the reform processes that have occurred in the 1990s. So you've got these very big enterprises, which are the successors of sovkhoz and kolkhoz, and some countries still run by governments, in others private. Then you've got these individual farms registered like Krestiansky Khazyastva, which were the beneficiaries of the breakup of those big farms and received through different processes shares of land or areas of land for farming. And then you have rural households who did not, in general, receive land through these processes and have only access to kitchen gardens. But it is these households who own the bulk of livestock inventories in Central Asia. So one of the questions is how to integrate these households, how to help them to make the best use of their livestock assets. And also the individual farms, many of them are also very small, although some of them resemble the large enterprises, many of them have no more livestock than do households. I want to look at two aspects or two barriers to the inclusion of small producers into the livestock sector, into the growth of the sector, because it is growing across Central Asia, in all Central Asian countries. One of them is access to land, and the other is access to markets. So, as I was saying, this graph, I think, illustrates one of the points of the between the fact that livestock are owned by households and the fact that land is owned by other entities or accessed by other entities. So the outcomes of reform on asset distributions, if you look, these are four of the Central Asian republics: Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. Livestock units here in percentage belonging to households. Individual farms are orange and enterprises are gray. So if we look at Uzbekistan and Tajikistan in particular, over 90% of livestock are held in households. In Kazakhstan, about half. In Kyrgyzstan, just under half. And yet the arable land here is owned almost entirely by enterprises and individual farms. And pasture, if you look at Tajikistan, is almost entirely allocated again to these individual farms and enterprises. And in some countries, you have this black here, which is state lands, which is unallocated. But in terms of formal legal access to pasture, households find it very difficult to access this resource, and also many small farms, because many pastures, and of course all arable land, is provided to individuals. So in terms of lease or private property, yeah? And it's very difficult for smallholders to gain access to these leasehold or private arrangements, because there are very high transaction costs to obtaining those areas of land. Only in some republics, for example, in Kyrgyzstan, this red area here, this is common land. So there are also arrangements for the provision of pastoral resources through common property resource management. And this tends to be much easier for smallholders to access. But those arrangements are only available in Kyrgyzstan, where they're available to all livestock holders, and in Kazakhstan, but only around villages. So smallholders have no formal legal access to the more remote pasture areas, although they may have informal arrangements, of course. So why is this important? Central Asian livestock production traditionally relied on mobility. So in all these countries, the sustainable management of pastures relied on movement of livestock between different seasonal pastures. And this was also the source of livestock productivity because they were able to exploit these variable resources over the year. And the Soviet system also used this, built on these systems, if you like. But migratory systems have broken down, leading to localized degradation around villages and undergrazing in remote pastures. So all these guys, all these livestock owned by households, most of them are no longer moving as they would have done in the recent past. Yeah, so these small farms and households are stuck around these villages and must therefore spend more on fodder. Now, synergies between sustainable development goals on poverty reduction, food security, economic growth, and life on land will all be achieved by rebuilding economies of scale for movement through appropriate property rights systems and infrastructure development in remote pastures. So, for example, access to remote pastures by smallholders could be improved by building on collective herding systems through common property resource management, as has been done in Kyrgyzstan. But in most of the countries, the individualized forms of land rights, if you like, they're a barrier to the access of pastures by these smallholders. So the second topic I want to talk about very quickly is access to markets. So the other issue for smallholders, apart from accessing land as for grazing, is access to markets. Globally, there's been a lot of interest in access of how smallholders access agricultural value chains. Because there's an increasing demand for livestock products, and this represents an opportunity for smallholders to increase their income. But the benefits depend on access to these increasingly complex value chains by this group. And one possible way in which they can access chains is this vertical coordination or contract farming, whereby smallholders or larger farms as well can enter into a contractual relationship with processors, fatteners, or supermarkets, for example. And in this relationship, often the buyer of the product also provides services to the supplier in terms of insurance, access to credit, and technical support. So this is something, there's a lot of interest in this, particularly in areas of the world such as Latin America. But in Central Asia, this is very poorly developed. The majority of producers sell through informal channels, such as to traders and bazaars. Most products sold are home processed and packaged. Very few farmers have a direct relationship with the processor, supermarket, or feedlot, still less any kind of contract. Value chains are informal and very, very long, with value being dissipated all the way along the value chain. Processors, on the other hand, are unable to source sufficient volumes of the quality raw product they need. And this difference is often met through imports. Amazingly, Central Asian countries, despite their growing livestock sectors, are very large importers of livestock products. So what are the solutions from this point of view? Service cooperatives have been the topic of a lot of research in Central Asia. They're very important in America and Europe, where they link farmers to firms by covering transaction costs. But these institutions are weak in Central Asia. Little is known about the relative success of various cooperative models, private intermediaries and processes in facilitating vertical coordination, whether this is formal or informal. Investment in rural services can also improve value chains, more than the funding of vertically integrated operations. So in Kazakhstan, for example, you have these big investments in vertically integrated operations, but these are unlikely to benefit smallholders because they cannot access, they're excluded, if you like, from those institutions. So that was just a few thoughts of these barriers to including inclusive growth in the Central Asian livestock sector. I'm sure there are many other interesting topics and points that we can discuss concerning that. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That's really great. Any questions to Sarah? I have Sarah, then I have a question. I mean, the where is the growth taking place in these three categories that you mentioned? Definitely, the households are where we see most of the herd now. But is it where the growth is taking place?
Growth, I mean, it depends on the country. In Kazakhstan at the moment, the proportion of livestock in household is decreasing, and individual farms, that is where the growth is taking place. I'm not sure about the other republics at the moment. But yeah, I mean, in Uzbekistan, I assume it is also in the farmer sector that most growth is taking place. But I'm not sure. I mean, in some countries, you do have the enterprise sector where you're getting some investments now. Depends whether we're talking about growth in livestock numbers or growth in
of course.
Monetary output. Yeah.
No, I mean, what you say is what we observe in Kazakhstan. I was just wondering for the others. And the other question is, I mean, from the experience in Kazakhstan, there is, or from what I understand, the idea of re-exploiting or putting back into production, so to say, some of the pasture that is remote and far away from human settlement is more by facilitating the kind of development of household farms in those areas, right? Helping them with accessing land, mapping where land is available, providing support to transport infrastructure, etc., etc. So these individual farms start to settle in those remote land, more than having the animal movements organized again and having the mobility organized again, maybe with different technical arrangement that it used to be, etc. Is that something that you see in the others? I mean, do you see any strong or any effort in one of those republics to reactivate mobility of the herd?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, if you take a country like Kyrgyzstan, where all the pasture is common, in Kyrgyzstan, you have these pasture user associations, and they also have maintained these traditions of collective herding, and those two things go together. So in fact, people pool their animals because you need to create those economies of scale for movement. So they pool their animals, and even very, very small livestock owners with 2 or 3 animals are able to send them to remote pastures because you've got the collective herding institutions to do that, and the land property rights, this common property, which means they have the right to go there. And the pasture users associations, which exist in every village, they are supposed to promote this movement where they sell people pasture tickets, and people are supposed to move. So the idea, I mean, there is some, social pressure that they move, and of course it's better for their animals. And you have these institutions where they pay a herder to take them. Now in Kazakhstan, the problem is that if you haven't got a leasehold, if you are lacking a leasehold over land, then the only pastures you can access are very far away, because all the land around that's relatively close to villages has been leased to individuals. So those people who missed out on the leaseholds now have this problem that the only available pastures are extremely far away. And in Kazakhstan, these systems for herding collectively, although they exist around the village, there seems to be issues for people to go further than that. So they're not going, well, some people are going spontaneously, but it's a lot less common than in Kyrgyzstan. So there are issues of trust, issues of institutions, issues of the right land tenure arrangements to enable it to happen. Now in Kazakhstan, all the land which is easily available and high quality is leased. So they've got this big problem now, and they're trying to find solutions to this, but they need to go back to first principles and think again about this issue.
Yeah, and there are issues of land that is leased but is not used.
Yeah, also, yeah.
These in large chunks, and
Yes.
and that is creating a kind of a dilemma. Yeah. What do you
It's a
think about
huge,
that?
yeah, I mean, I visited one farm which had 1 million hectares and almost no animals. But they're trying to expropriate these farms. So
Yeah,
they have
but
they need, the problem is there is no, in Kazakhstan, in the different ministries and the different organizations, they have not got a single, if you like, guiding plan to take this forward and decide how they're going to do this. Basically, I mean, my point of view is that each municipality should find a way to create an area of pasture for common use for people who don't have leaseholds, which could be created from existing reserve land. It could be through an expropriation process of people who are not using their land, but there needs to be a roadmap towards creating some areas of pasture to enable this mobile pastoralism to continue amongst smallholders and also small farms. I mean, yeah.
Aryan, you wanted to ask something. I see you turn your video on.
Yes, thank you, Pierre. Thank you, Sarah, for that. It's very interesting introduction. In terms of access to markets, the vertical coordination you indicated to allow smallholders and households to access markets is necessary. How does that relate to sort of international markets? Is there scope for greater sort of access to international markets, and what are the sort of the requirements for that? And in particular, what is the role of animal welfare regulation in that? So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, vertical coordination, it's usually the cases where it works, and it's worked a lot in Eastern Europe. I haven't looked at export markets, but often it most often occurs when you have foreign direct investment by a multinational company. For example, in Poland and other Eastern European countries, you've had these big dairy companies coming in, and they work with farmers to help them to produce the quality and quantity of milk that they need. Now, it doesn't always benefit the smallest. It depends on the producer landscape. Where all the farms are pretty small, then they will work with everyone. And so small farmers will benefit. But this is usually for the local market. This is usually for the national market. So in the cases I read about in Eastern Europe, these were international investments, investing in small farmers, providing them with credit and technical advice for sale of milk in Poland. I'm not sure about how, international for export. Yeah, that's a whole other layer. But yeah, I'm not sure. But one thing about animal welfare is that, of course, it depends on the animal welfare regulations in the country. So, any big company that's investing in farmers will presumably be following those regulations, whatever they are.
Yeah, and I think those are questions that will come up really, because definitely Kazakhstan has the ambition to develop a large export-oriented production system, right? Starting from cow-calf operations into feedlots and so on. And I'm pretty sure that together with some environmental guarantees about how this is done, there will be a need to also monitor the animal welfare. Those value chains. The demand will be high. I mean, if I think for any market, especially if they target the premium market.
The big problem for Kazakhstan and for all these countries is, first of all, they're unable to export, firstly, because of veterinary and hygiene problems. Animal welfare will be another issue, but that's the big barrier right now, is they do not meet international standards for disease control. Kazakhstan is probably the only country which has got somewhere, but the others completely, they're miles away. Miles away.
Yeah. No, Kazakhstan has questions of delay in obtaining the certificates and so on, but we definitely visited some exporters.
Yeah. It's
beginning. Fresh and frozen products. Look, I said we would finish much earlier, but I would still try to, if you want to get, go through the exercise. I've posted a link on the chat to a Google Doc. If you can hit that link, you will reach a PowerPoint. And that PowerPoint is what we plan to use for the breakout, but we are going to do it in plenary, and we're not going to do everything. I think it's just too long. So I don't see you. Are you able to open the link? Do you see it?
Yeah.
All right.
Pierre, we received the link, but we cannot edit the document. There is no permission to edit the document.
Ah, okay, that's bad. I thought gosh, I have to do what I have. Okay, let me go there. Okay. How do I share? How do you change that everybody can edit? I don't know that. Well, otherwise you can let's not waste time with it. But if you are in the file, I can type it. That's going to be it. We don't want to make it too long. Are you guys in the file now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I had the first thing here was on slide 2 and 3. I have the quick introduction to the, and I'm going to stop my camera. It's going to be seasick. On slide 2 and 3, I have a quick introduction to the 5 action tracks of the Food Systems Summit. Action track number 1, ensure access to safe and nutritious food for all. That's really about access, cost of food, available of safe food, etc. Nutritious food, those are the elements we have in action track 1. Action track number 2 is a shift to sustainable consumption pattern. Here we talk about local food systems, we talk about recycling, so the whole circular economy comes in. We talk about food losses and food waste reduction, etc. The action track number 3 talks about pretty much what Alex introduced. So it's a nature positive production, it's climate, but it's also other dimensions of environmental sustainability, pollution, water use, soil degradation, etc. Slide 3, you will see action track number 4, which is about advancing equitable livelihoods. So that's pretty much about kind of shared growth, if you want, poverty alleviation, leave no one behind. These are the themes under action 4. And then the 5th action track is about resilience to vulnerabilities, shocks and stress. And they include a range of shock and stress, from climate to economic, to also, of course, pandemics and so health issues, right? So those are the 5 action tracks that the Food Summit is looking at. And what we've been asked by the colleagues at GASL is to look for ECA, what are the main challenges for livestock in each of those tracks, right? Then it has a whole number of breakdowns and so on. So I don't think we can do that. But if still, as the group here, we could go to slide 5, then 6, 7, and 8, and just highlight, in your view, what are the critical challenges for livestock in this action track in ECA, right? If we could still try to do this as a group, that would be wonderful. Although I appreciate that we're not many now, but I think it would really help. Otherwise, someone else would have to do it, which maybe knows even, even less representative of the region than this group. So could we get a round of and I'll type it for you since I was not able to give you access. But could we have a round of kind of suggestions for action track number 1, ensure access to safe and nutritious food for all? What is the critical challenge? What are the critical challenges for livestock? So from what I hear, and I think that was Alex mentioning this, there is still a kind of a basic food security question in many of these countries, right? So there is still a role for livestock, probably in kind of ensuring basic access to nutritious food. Just to shoot one, right? But I would like to hear from you guys if there are some suggestions here. So, Yuri, you know very well the region. Please also come in. The colleagues who haven't spoken yet from Kazakhstan, please come in.
Yes, thank you, Pierre. I guess regarding action track 1, the most important issue is change in food preferences and diversity of available livestock feeds in the region. And that has implication for human nutrition, but also for economic development of the livestock sector, as sometimes the products produced by smallholders are either less available in some countries where a large-scale commercial production is developing, or in other cases it is actually available only in rural areas, and the smallholders have difficulties with accessing markets. So these dietary changes probably would be one of the issues to mention.
Okay. Look, in the meantime, I have tried to also give you editing access. Can you try, Yuri, to type some of those elements? I typed your point about changing feed preference for group 2. Can you see it? Yeah, I see now.
I don't see it yet.
So I think all of us can now edit the document, and you can add your points directly. Is that working?
Yes, I guess it's working now. I can edit.
Very good.
I don't see the text which you entered yet. Is it on the second slide or which one?
On slide 6, I added changes in food preference,
okay.
And then I must say I didn't. I was I was trying to change this editing preference, so I didn't.
I see. Okay, it works now well.
All right. So let's go to. All right. So let's take your point one by one, Yuri. So you had changes in food preferences, right? And that I think really goes into track number 2, right?
Right.
Then what else did you have?
Availability of livestock products produced by smallholders on the urban markets.
So maybe that is with action 4, right? And it goes a little bit with what Sarah mentioned in terms of smallholder access to markets. Is that okay? Or not?
Well, actually, I was thinking about both of my points to belong to action track 1 because it's
okay. Then just put it in there, right? Go since you can do it.
Okay.
Very good. I see it coming in. Any Yuri, you had another point to make?
No, that's all.
Okay, well, I see the slide being populated, so that's wonderful. For action 3, that's you, Alex, I guess.
Yes, I added some ideas.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Sarah, shall we put something on slide number 8, which is action track number 4? Shall we put something there on land, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll type something. Can I type in there or not?
Yeah, you can type. I think I managed to give everybody editing right.
Okay.
Is it? You are the anonymous raccoon, I think, Sarah. That's interesting.
I know. Yeah.
I don't know how they select these pseudo, but it's quite funny.
Yeah, so I could say inappropriate property rights systems for pasture access amongst smallholders or something.
Fritz is the former chairman of the Global Agenda, so and he has joined us. I see. Fritz, how are you? You're muted.
Hello, everybody. Thank
Hi.
you. Fine. I'm just joined very recently. I was very busy in another meeting, but it's nice to see you all. Thank you.
Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for visiting us. We were happy with 30 or 35 registered participants, but the turnout has been a little bit more limited than that. But we have great quality, so
yes,
we're still trying to respond to some of the questions. We have taken a simplified approach. We may not be able to structure all these things by the 3 kind of themes of GASL, but we at least for each of the 5 action tracks, we are mapping the main challenges for livestock. We have to do with the participation we have.
Absolutely, but
I hope it will be fine.
Quality comes before quantity, so we definitely will get some very interesting inputs from this area. So thank you very much for taking this on.
Pierre, I'm unable to type actually. It doesn't seem to.
I see people typing, so.
Yeah, I can't.
So what you're on slide? You were there. What do you want to write?
If you want to type, just reload the document.
Ah, okay. Right. So I'll type.
Thank you, Arjen.
Colleagues, I see
yes,
that many of you are typing, entering your inputs on the slides, but I noticed that some inputs clearly don't belong to certain action tracks. Maybe just wanted to draw attention that please read the names of action tracks and make sure that your input belongs to that one, because we have several slides. If you scroll down, you will find action track to which your inputs would belong.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Yuri. And that would be ideal, I would say, if you put it straight in a good action track. If you don't, we will do the cleaning afterwards. We can help with that also. I think for now, really, it's great that we can have some input. Sorry, Sandra, I see you raising your hand. Hi.
Yes,
hello. I think you are just joining.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Sandra Zafra. I'm from World Horse Welfare, and I just recently joined because I have other duties. But thank you for the discussion. I just this document you're talking about, are we all supposed to have it? Because I don't think I've been.
There is a link in the chat. If you go in the chat.
I went to the chat, but I cannot see it. Maybe it's because as I joined.
It is. I can post it again if you want.
Yes.
Because maybe that you were not. You don't see the chat before you enter the room. So now
Yes.
I post it again.
Okay. That's weird.
Oh, okay, no, that's not my bad. I sent it only to Eduardo.
It doesn't.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
Now.
Okay. Thank you. Now I can see it.
Okay.
Thanks.
And maybe Azar or Yuri explain to our colleagues, Russian-speaking colleagues, that they can enter in Russian if they prefer, and that we will take care of the translation later on.
Окей, Пьер. Коллеги, кому удобнее писать на русском языке, пожалуйста, пишите на русском, мы потом переведем. И также вы можете видеть, что каждый этот action track, он есть, его заглавие написано на двух языках, то есть там есть и русский, и английский. Так что если вам удобнее писать по-русски, пишите по-русски. Спасибо.
Wonderful. We're harvesting a lot of great ideas. That's great.
Speaking about track number 3, I really would like to mention that we need strong incentives for people to introduce environmentally friendly practices. Because, you know, at this moment, it's very small scale business. They don't have their own money, and they often even don't know what exactly to do. As Sarah represented and used some pictures, you see it sometimes one person business or one family business. They really not ready to spend a lot of money on such things. But if we are offering incentives and explain how they can benefit in their production and how to make it more nature friendly, it will definitely work. Especially we need to work with organic producers, because for some people it's very relatively easy to produce organic productions because they don't use many fertilizers or other things that potentially pollute the environment, and they just need to label properly their production, you know. It's also good to add. I will write more.
Yeah, definitely, and this is something we're definitely working on in Kazakhstan also, and ensuring that there is alignment between public support and environmental objectives, right? So that you don't have public support going in one direction and then you have to correct with kind of some environmental regulation also. But there is good alignment straight on. So yeah, very good point.
Felix, when you are thinking about your inputs, I would suggest to consider some points which, in my opinion, are quite underlying for many problems. And one of them, I believe, would be lack of science-based data on livestock impact on the environment it's a big problem because without numeric data, we cannot justify certain interventions, certain investments even cannot be justified without numbers. So that's why it is extremely important to have assessments to know how much livestock impacts the climate, so how much greenhouse gases are emitted, how much livestock impacts the biodiversity, how much it impacts soil erosion and carbon sequestration on pastures and so on. So availability of science-based evidence, data is a key. That's one thing I would suggest to consider. Another thing I would suggest to consider the importance of awareness raising still in the region. Unfortunately, many people don't understand the connection between livestock and environment and climate, and if they do understand, often they see it in only in negative way, which is not always the case. It is quite often possible to kill two birds with one shot, to achieve better economic indicators and less impact on the environment, for example, by improving conversion of feeds to animal proteins and at the same time reducing the GHG emission intensity. So when you are thinking about your inputs, maybe please consider these points.
Yeah, great contribution, Yuri. I also agree with you, and I believe it will be helpful for us to structure our inputs on different levels. There are some activities that necessary on governmental level, some on industrial level, and some on individual level, like what individual farmers can do or what individual consumers can do. It's also helpful.
Thank you.
Actually,
yeah, no, I agree with that. That one is getting very much very detailed, and that's great. I agree. We will need also to structure a little bit. I see that number 9, action track 5 on resilience is maybe a little short. If we can think about options there, and if I also would like to ask a question about slide number 6. Someone inserted meat and dairy alternatives, reduction in meat and dairy consumption. And I wanted to ask a clarification. Is that a suggestion, or is that something that is observed in certain parts of these countries or certain segments of the population? Could you please give a little more explanation on that entry? Whoever wrote that.
That was me. I don't know whether or not it's observed in this particular part, but I think it's a challenge to the livestock sector going into the future.
So, but in general, you mean, Arjen, or is that something that is mostly related to the region?
I think in general, rather than, I don't have that much knowledge of the region, but I think for all regions, including this region, this may be a something to consider, or something that will affect the livestock sector in these countries.
Okay, so maybe that's something we could put that there is a need to check if there is data indicating that, right?
We reviewed in our report the impact of livestock in human diets, the importance, and you've got this dichotomy. You've got, especially in Kazakhstan, which is developing very fast. I mean, Central Asia has some of the highest rates of heart disease in the world. So you've got some part of the population which, for health reasons, would be well advised to reduce, especially meat consumption. We put a lot of figures in the report. But at the other end of the scale, where you've got poverty, especially in Tajikistan, people are not getting enough livestock products for a healthy life. And so it depends on which country and which part of the population. Yeah.
Actually, in this region, it is very important to note the background of the countries and cultural preferences. And since most of the countries are basically used to be nomadic societies in the past, and they relied on livestock products, still culturally meat consumption is a very high priority. And that's important to keep in mind when communicating with stakeholders and when suggesting new ideas, because reduction of consumption of animal sourced foods is actually a hard idea to sell. On the other hand, I guess it's important to focus on production efficiency, which is a win-win solution.
I also would like to add that FAO has the 4 betters, like better production, better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life for all. So it's better resonates with local people as well.
Absolutely.
Hello? Someone was trying to speak and got disconnected. Sandra, do you wanted to say something?
Yes, I just want to I don't know if I can just write directly or maybe just highlight it in the right about action track number 5, building resilience. From World Horse Welfare perspective, I would like to highlight that one of the challenges is the recognition of the role that working animals, not only equine animals in general, have in building resilience in many different aspects. So I think it's crucial to bear this in mind, and also in particular in the livestock and agricultural sector. So yeah.
You can type directly into the slide.
Okay, that's cool. Thanks.
We will edit them and check them a little bit later, but feel free to. Okay. Colleagues, I think we are getting close to the end. I see that you are still working on the slides. This is going to stay open for some more time. So if you want to come back, or if you want to share with someone else these slides to get more input, please feel free to do that. We will then, if you have questions, or if you want to track a reference or someone who can be contacted for more information, feel free to do that if you wish. So when with Gulsum and Yuri we finalize these slides, we will make sure we put that in, and we consult where we need, especially if there are different points of view that are expressed. Well, with that, I would like to really thank you. Fritz, you want to say a few words maybe on behalf of GASL, but before you do that, I just wanted to thank again this group. I just regret, frankly, that we didn't have more participants, because I think the 3 presentations were extremely insightful, and I think the conversation we had after that was also very good. So we could have benefited more. We could also have benefited from more input, but we did with what we have, and that was already very great, and I learned a lot for sure. So thanks for your participation, and we'll be back in touch. Fritz, over to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, all of you. Bye.
I think it has been very good, and I'm very happy that you have been able to put this together. And we are looking forward to have a report on the MSP from the Eastern Europe and Central Asia region. I think that's very nice. And we have a very broad spectrum now of all the inputs we have received from all over the world. And we are looking forward to see you all next week in the global MSP. So thank you again, and stay well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.